Welcome to Infinity Nerd. I'm your host, Mike Smith, and today I'm joined by my co host, John Haycock.
Hi.
And in this episode, we're going over the brand new show from Disney Plus, Loki.
So, starting right off the bat, spoiler free, um, just for those who haven't seen it yet. So, it's only going to be a few seconds. We'll talk about a few things that are spoiler free, and then we're going to move on. So, if you haven't seen it, you can watch or listen to up to that point, and then we're going to go into spoiler territory. So, I would suggest watching it first before you listen to the rest of this podcast. So,
Absolutely.
first thoughts.
It's always good to see Tom Hiddleston as Loki. That's never a bad time.
No, I think he was perfectly cast from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
I mean, Marvel just knows exactly what they're doing, man. Like Thor. I mean, Chris Hemsworth is perfect for that character. Tom Hiddleston is Loki. Captain America, Chris Evans.
Did you
Even
know that? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
sorry, even Benedict Cumberbatch was perfect. I mean, he even looks
Oh,
just
yeah.
like the cartoon.
Oh, 100%. Did you know that Tom Hiddleston actually originally auditioned for Thor?
Yeah, I
There's
did.
actually an audition video you can watch with him with the blonde wig and everything.
And a little tidbit here about Loki. I don't remember what the movie was called, but uh, Matt Damon.
Oh, yes.
He played Loki, and I can't remember what the movie was called.
Thor
But
Ragnarok.
well, no, he actually portrayed himself as Loki in this other movie with Bette Midler, um, way back, and then that was kind of a nod to it. Him
Oh.
reprising his role as a fake Loki for stage.
He's supposed to be in the fourth Thor, from what I heard.
Really,
Yeah,
doing what?
probably being Loki. Tom Hiddleston's out. It's all about Matt Damon.
They just kill him off.
He's like, I've died too many times. My Marvel contract's up.
Oh
But yeah,
man.
overall, I would have to say first impressions with the episode. Obviously, there's still a lot of mystery to it.
Mm-hmm.
It had a lot of heart, a lot more heart, I think, than I would have expected for a first episode of Loki.
Definitely, especially about Loki.
Mm-hmm. And then a good amount of humor as well. I actually was a little nervous
Yes.
about Owen Wilson because whenever you watch certain movies with certain actors, you don't see the character. You see the actor, like
Mm-hmm.
Tom Cruise, for example. You don't see, it doesn't matter what movie he's in. He's Tom Cruise, and I
Right.
love Tom Cruise. But um, with Loki and having Owen Wilson in it, I was like, is it gonna be too much Owen Wilson? But it's actually just the right amount of Owen Wilson that you want, and mixed with just enough serious moments with him that I think he actually is a really well cast character.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I don't think they could have picked anybody better. Like you hear all those different, you know, castings that they had,
Mm-hmm.
but sometimes, that other actor has scheduling conflicts or they just don't want the part. Um, like for instance, Tom Cruise was going to be Iron Man,
Mm-hmm.
but he
Yeah,
had scheduling conflicts.
which is so beneficial for everyone. I
Yeah,
again, I love Tom
definitely.
Cruise, but I just when you see what RDJ did,
Mm-hmm.
Tom Cruise would not have pulled that off the same way. It still would have been fun. It'd have been a good popcorn flick because he's a great action star, but it's not Tony Stark.
And I think them killing him off was kind of better for everyone because he's everybody just sees him as Iron Man. He is Iron
He
Man.
died.
Spoiler.
Oh, shit.
Anyway, we're getting off topic here,
Yeah, we
so
got.
we're gonna dive all the way in, go non-spoiler free. So whoever's listening, who hasn't seen this yet, I suggest you pause right here, watch the episode, and join back with us. So,
Yep. All right, take it away.
all right. So, starting starting the episode, it opens up 2012, New York City.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and another little tidbit about that one opening scene is the exact same opening scene that they did in Endgame.
Mm-hmm.
So just a little Easter egg type thing, I guess. It goes through what happened in Endgame. They get the Tesseract, they bound Loki up. And then, of course, Ant-Man, it opens up, he takes the cube and disappears.
Yeah.
Then it opens up desert. It was Mongolia, I believe. Yeah.
Yes, the Gobi,
Gobi
Desert in Mongolia.
And I was listening to this with headphones, so I don't know who was just listening onto regular TV or screen or anything like that. Probably didn't hear it, but if you listen to it with headphones and you have the volume turned up quite a bit, when he appears and he falls to the ground, you can still hear the Tesseract humming, and then it kind of goes quiet, and after it stops humming, you can hear a faint Hulk roar in the back.
Ooh, that is interesting. I did not know that.
Yeah, I didn't either until I rewatched it this morning.
I like that though, because it's almost like the sound is still coming through.
Yeah.
The portal as he emerges.
Mm-hmm. And then it just fades away. And I thought that was kind of a cool little thing to put in there.
That is.
And then you see a bunch of natives that walk up, and he just I like that scene because he like tries to be all powerful, and he's like, I'm here to do this and this and this, and then they're like, dude, why are you here? But they can't understand him.
Right. The language barrier.
Yeah. And then of course later on you see those what did they call them, Minutemen.
Yeah,
they come out of that portal with I can't remember her name, Hunter something, like B12 or something like that.
B15.
A B15, okay.
Yep. From the Time Variance Authority.
And yeah, she's a badass. For sure.
She is. I like that he just thinks like that they're beneath him, and the whole time, like they, especially when they hit him in the face with the thing that makes his face go all wobbly.
Yeah.
That was actually pretty funny.
So if you go back and you actually pause it, so Hunter B15 and then the 2 Minutemen that are side by side of her. If you look at those little baton things that they're holding, her color is blue. At the very end, the color is blue. And if you look at the other Minutemen, they're orange.
That's interesting.
And if you didn't know that, I was doing some research earlier, and I came across this video, and they talked about that the difference is, so orange is those that kind of reset you back in time,
right,
where you're supposed to be, and then the blue is slow motion, which is why when she hit him, he immediately went into slow motion. Yeah, exactly. So I don't know if there's any other type of colors unless it's just those two.
That's interesting. Is that from the comics, do you know, or is that just what someone figured out somehow?
I don't 100% know if it's from the comics.
Okay.
But I would assume so. If anybody knows 100% where that came from, let us know. But I know that they started coming out with comics for the what is it, the TVA. I believe they started back in the 90s.
I'm gonna say 1900s. I think I'll be right.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Because there was this whole thing where, what was the show? The Umbrella Academy was kind of, giving him crap, and it was like, well, they came out with the comics first and came out with this idea way before Umbrella Academy.
That's like a good show too.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, I really liked when he first enters the TVA, and he's just kind of like, I'm not supposed to be here. And they're like, take a ticket. And he's like, I don't want a ticket. You know what I mean? He's the other guy. And he's like, this is fine Asgardian leather, or whatever he says. And they're just like, yep, nope, you're in a jumpsuit.
Yeah, and it like disintegrates his clothes.
Yeah, they're just like, you have no power here. We do not care.
Yeah. I mean, he really doesn't. I mean, he tries to use his power, and it doesn't work. I mean, even the Infinity Stones don't have.
Well, that's actually what I
power.
thought, kind of jumping ahead a little bit. But when he had the Tesseract to himself for like a few minutes by himself, and he just kind of sat there with it, and I'm like, why isn't he trying to escape? And then, of course, they reveal the Infinity
Mm.
Stone does not work there. Um, I mean, I feel like they kind of referenced it earlier as more of like to set up the rules to say, hey, this is why. But I don't know. For some reason, I thought maybe it would still work, but I don't know. But I like that it
Yeah.
didn't.
Yeah, me too. I thought a really funny part of the episode was when he falls down and the guy's like printing out all those papers and he's like, please sign here everything that you've said.
Yeah.
And then he's like, what? And then another piece of paper prints out with the
This too.
what?
Yeah.
Oh man.
There's
I
a lot
thought
of
that
humor in
was
this,
so
and
good.
it's not just necessarily like comical humor in the sense of like him getting hit in the face, which I'd probably put more as physical comedy. But even just like that, where it's like something very subtle. Like if you weren't paying attention, you wouldn't know what the second paper was for.
Right.
It's something if you're paying attention enough, because like if you're on your phone, you might not catch that.
Yeah.
But it's just that's one of those things. Why I love these kind of shows is it makes me not want to put my phone in my hand and be looking at this screen when I should be watching that screen because I know I'll miss
Exactly.
something.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's what I love about Marvel. I mean, I was pausing it and playing it, pausing it, playing it back and forth, because I didn't want to miss those little subtle details that, of course, Marvel always puts into their movies or
Oh
even
yeah.
shows. Like I paused it the first time I watched it with my girlfriend. We were sitting there on the couch, and I kept pausing it, and I'm like, "Oh, what does this mean? What do you think this means?"
She's probably getting so
And
annoyed
she's
with you.
like, "She's like, just play it, please."
See that I would watch it once first the whole way through, and then if I'm gonna go back through, I would pause it at that point because then it's
Yeah.
like, because to me it's like watch it once for me personally at least. Of course, it's different for everybody, but I
Mm-hmm.
like to watch it all at once, like think about it, like kind of I don't want to say de-stress, but decompress it in my
Right.
head. Um, over the next day or two, and then sometimes if I still need to go back, I can be like, okay, what about this? Or like I'll go to because I've been rewatching the Marvel movies.
Mm-hmm.
I'll watch the Easter egg videos and the
Oh yeah.
bloopers and the behind the scenes because and I'll read the development process on each of the movies because I want to know all the little nods and all the little Easter eggs basically.
Yeah.
Like for example, talking about a Thor character, Thor himself, Donald Blake was his nickname or
Oh
fake
yeah.
name in the first movie. That was actually his alias in the comics.
Right. Yeah.
He was Dr. Blake, and then he turned into Thor. That's my
Mm.
understanding, at least.
Yeah.
And so that was their way of nodding to that. But if you don't look up that kind of stuff, or if you don't already have that information, you just miss out entirely. So I love looking at the Easter eggs, or like when you're in the first Captain America movie, you see what was his name, Zola,
Yeah.
and he's got a little like screen in front of his face that he's looking through, and it was like a foreshadowing to who he becomes in
Mm-hmm.
Winter Soldier. So
Yeah.
I love the little seeds and the nods to that.
Man, Marvel just has it made, man. I don't know what it is about it, but they're just so
One day
good
they're
at what
gonna
they
do
do.
something terrible. We're gonna just all accept it as still really good because of everything we've gotten from them.
We're in just complete denial if they do anything bad.
Yep. I didn't know if Guardians was gonna work, and
Yeah, me neither.
it's almost. I mean, the first one specifically is almost a perfect movie in my eyes. Like I wouldn't change anything.
No, definitely. And I love the second one to a point.
I love all of them, but the first one's definitely my favorite. But I think
Oh,
it's
for
because it's
sure.
also such a surprise hit. When you have a surprise hit, moving into a second one, it's very difficult to top.
Yeah.
And that's why certain franchises like Star Wars has really stuck around because if the
Mm,
second one bombed, there wouldn't be a third
right.
through ninth, or whatever you want to call it. So back to kind of the episode itself. I really want to say I liked Agent Morbius, or not Morbius, Mobius, M.
Mobius.
Mobius,
Yeah.
played by Owen Wilson, because he was a curious character. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
saying I was curious about him, but he was like someone who's just like, hmm, and he would try to piece things together that weren't the typical TVA way, so to speak.
Right.
I did like their little intro about the timekeepers and the little cartoon
Yeah,
that they did
definitely.
to kind of explain a little bit more. Um, Although I don't know how I feel about it. Like, obviously, there's always a point of destiny in a lot of fictional universes like this.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he's like, no, I'm the master of my own destiny, basically. I'm going to do what I
Right.
want to do. That's like, yeah, but does he? And it does this. I mean, what happens when Mobius and him catch? Jumping ahead a little bit too much. When they catch Loki eventually, the other Loki,
Yeah.
does he get reset? There's supposed to be a season 2, but if isn't he impacting all the timeline?
So when they talk about it, uh, well, one thing, speaking of that little intro video that they show, the timekeepers,
Yeah.
they all have little gems in the center of their foreheads. Do you think those are Infinity Stones?
I have the picture right here. I would say no, only for the, and again, I don't really know much about I don't know anything about the TVA in the comics personally.
Yeah, me neither.
But looking at this picture right here, I have, it's, they're all, it looks like two of them might be Kree, or it could be masks, I don't know. But they all have a red stone. So I would say no, would be my initial
Interesting.
thoughts. It's a good idea, like for sure, but I think that was just the universe itself. I think the collector
That
said that
makes
it
sense.
kind of created the Infinity Stones before life really appeared.
Right.
But that's not a bad theory, though. I mean, it still could be. Who knows? Maybe they just had a lot of paperweights, and they said, you know what's a cool color for all of us to have the same color paperweight? On Mondays, we wear red. It's
Yeah.
like Mean Girls all over again.
Oh no. Oh goodness. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, so I I was very curious about this. So you know how he goes through that, like, it kind of looks like a metal detector, and he's like, "What
Mm-hmm.
is this?" And he's like, "Oh, it determines if you're a robot."
Right.
And so he starts questioning himself, and he's like, "Am I a robot? Like, am I gonna be melted down?" And so he walks through, and he's like, "Oh, what is that?" And it kind of looks like a Polaroid, and he says it's
Yes.
his temporal aura.
Yeah.
And I realized after watching the episode a couple of times, um, it's basically their fingerprints. So they track your aura. So I
Oh,
don't
I
mean
see
to
what you're saying.
I don't mean to jump to the end, but at the end, when they end up meeting Bad Loki, um, and they're in that field, and he has this little thing out, and the little spikes going up, and he's like, "Oh yeah, there's a temporal aura of this variant that's here."
Are
So,
you sure you haven't watched the second episode?
oh, I'm positive. That's at the very end of the first episode.
I don't
It's like
remember
a
them actually running into him. I just remember
well,
them
they don't
saying
they
it
don't
and then they flash to it.
right, they don't run into him. It's just a silhouette.
Okay, okay. I just wanted to make sure. I was like, because I'm not caught up.
So I mean, it could be Loki, or it
I
could be
think it
someone
is.
completely different. But
I think
anyway,
it's like a female Loki or something else. So it's not Tom Hiddleston versus Tom Hiddleston. It's Tom Hiddleston versus either child Loki or female Loki, because we all know that he's gender fluid and even age fluid to a certain degree.
yeah, definitely. Um, so they start talking about the Nexus, and if you remember, we were first introduced to Nexus events in WandaVision.
Mm-hmm.
Um, by Jimmy Woo.
Yes.
Um, so, and then they start talking about if there's a nexus that's, you know, not checked, then that kind of creates one of those timelines that they talk about in Infinity War or Endgame.
Right.
I think it's Endgame. That's what it is. Um, when she talks to Bruce about that, how it, splits off the timeline. And so they have to go back and fix it. But here's the thing that kind of caught my eye about that. So they talk about if that branches off, then another one branches off, and it creates what they called. So they said it could branch off into madness. So my first thought was multiverse of madness. Obviously, Doctor Strange. The
Right.
new movie coming out. And then it said if that happens, then it could lead to another multiversal war. What was the first one? The one with the aliens and Thanos and stuff? Is that the first one?
I'd say no, because it's just all one universe. It didn't deal with the multiverse, where we're about to get into the multiverse territory.
Well, that's the thing that I wrote down, is that they said it would lead to another one.
There probably was one, it's just ancient, before, our time, so to speak.
That
That's the
would
only
make
thing that makes
sense.
sense to me.
Yeah. Do you think it could tie into, this new Spider Verse movie, WandaVision, or even? Well, I would assume more to Doctor Strange.
Loki's supposed to tie in to Doctor Strange, from what I understand. So it's possible, maybe something that Loki being there, like I said, upsetting the timeline in his own way, or maybe he escapes part way through because if he's not
Hmm.
at the TVA, he can escape. He
Yeah.
can, maybe take one of those, paperweights and teleport. Because
Yeah.
it might not be useful there, but if he takes it in his pocket and leaves,
Then
it's a
he's
whole
good.
different
Yeah.
story. Yeah. I heard that Loki, WandaVision, and Spider Man and Doctor Strange all have this like multiverse little saga thing going on. I don't know how far they're going to go beyond that. I think it's supposed to culminate with Doctor Strange, like a mini arc.
Right.
Um, I don't know if I'd say it's because of that, but that's actually a really good catch, and it could be. I actually forgot until you mentioned it that Loki was even going to be a part of that in whatever fashion that is.
Yeah. TVA,
Mm-hmm.
uh, which I mean, makes sense. Why? What's his name? Casey doesn't know what a
Yes.
fish is.
Yeah, I thought
He's
that was a
like, "What's
great
a
line.
fish?" So, one thing I picked up on is that Owen Wilson's character says that the TVA created every single person inside the building, and they've been there since their creation.
Right.
So I thought it was just kind of weird, but I still think it's funny that he doesn't know what a fish is.
Probably because it's just not his job. He doesn't have to deal with the timeline. He seems more of like a desk jockey.
Jockey. And then another funny scene when he sees that one guy get reset, and he's like, "I have my ticket right here."
Oh yes, no, that was hilarious. And I liked, like I said, they had a good amount of humor and they balanced it with the serious moments, like him seeing the clips of his life. And one thing that I absolutely love, this is probably one of my favorite things about this episode, is the fact that they actually blame Loki for Frigga's death, which
Yeah.
is technically true. And I've actually thought about it because I again rewatched it recently. I'm like, well, actually, if he
Mm-hmm.
hadn't sent him to the stairs to the left, she may have survived that.
Yeah.
So maybe when he's in agony in his prison cell, it's not because he's just mourning; he's blaming himself.
Yeah, for sure.
Um, Obviously, he's experiencing all these things. He just lost the battle in New York and
Mm-hmm.
found out his whole future all in the same day. And basically finding out he's rather insignificant. He basically brought the heroes together to stop evil, which ended up working.
Yeah,
If it wasn't for Loki as showing up the first place, there would be no Avengers.
they basically uh, call Loki a stepping stone.
Yeah, that's all he was. He was a stepping
Yeah,
stone to building the Avengers so they could stop Thanos.
like
And
they
I
just
do like that they reference that the Avengers, the reason why they're not being arrested by the TVA is because they were meant to go back in time.
right, and that's what they said because he's like,
Well, and they
uh,
fixed it.
yeah, oh, because well, yeah. So he talks to that judge lady, and
Yes.
he's like, well, maybe I can go stop the Avengers because they're doing the same thing, and she's like,
Yeah.
well,
How did he know that though? That was one of my questions. He has no idea that the Avengers are going back in time.
I'm sure he knows, especially with Ant-Man kicking the thing and it flies open. That's how he gets the
Oh
Tesseract.
yeah, he does actually reference. He's like two Tony Starks wearing the same
Mm-hmm.
cologne or something like that. So there was a thing, but it is still, I think, a bit of a stretch to say that he knew that that's what the Avengers were doing, not just like
Yeah,
Tony Stark maybe has his own cologne brand. You don't know. You're inside Stark Tower. Of course, it's gonna smell like Tony Stark. He has everyone just going psh, 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 as you're walking through.
but if you remember, there were two Tony Starks right next to Loki. He was dressed up as a guard coming
Right,
back
right,
in Endgame, and then he was with the Avengers during
right. Well, I
2012.
mean, he is the god of mischief, so maybe he's able to kind of spot certain things more. I mean,
Yeah.
it's a little thing. It's not like it's the end of the road for me where I'm like, oh, that's it. I give up on Marvel. It just was a little bit of a hiccup, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Even though they did try to somewhat explain it, they could have done a whole different thing. I think to just maybe he was like able to sneak into a room and fast forward and see what happens to the Avengers, so he could find a way to get out and then stop them or whatever. And he sees
Mm-hmm.
that they go back in time, and then he goes in front of the judge like, well, they're doing that. That'd make
Right.
a lot more sense to me because then he knows for a fact of what they're going to do. Because also
And
too, at the time he says this, they haven't gone back in time yet, so technically they haven't broken
mhm.
any time traveling laws.
And one thing I like uh, that Marvel's been doing is showing a lot more feminism, which I think
Hmm.
is awesome.
Right.
And
Absolutely.
they kind of have like a little nod to this uh, when Owen Wilson's character comes up to the lady and he's like, I always feel like I'm looking up to you. And he's like, that's good. It's appropriate.
Yeah,
I was
I
like,
thought that
good
was
for
funny.
you.
It was both funny and appropriate.
Yeah, seriously.
Yeah,
So
I fully agree.
I think it's awesome that they're doing that. So, um, a question for you.
Yes.
So the Frost Giants from the first movie.
Yeah, from Jotunheim.
So was the main dude? Is that is his name Laufey?
Yeah, he's his
Okay.
father.
Okay. So that's why they call him Laufey son, like Loki Laufey son.
Yeah, like Thor, Odin's son.
Right. That whole like thing kind of threw me off, so I wasn't sure how they got that last name or whatever.
Right.
So it's just basically just named off after the father.
Yeah. It's
Interesting.
kind of like I mean I know like Lord of the Rings for example. They're like, oh, I'm so and so, son of so and so, or like
Mm,
how we just carry on the surname in our day and age. It's not how
yeah.
it used to be. So, but yeah. So I mean, for me, I really liked when he finally got escapes to a certain degree and realizes that he's kind of the problem and that he can't. He went back and saw his own death, and he's kind of
Hmm.
discovering his own purpose. And he kind of admits that he doesn't actually like hurting people, which I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of because I kind of feel like when you watch him and he's got that smile and they do the eyeball thing, which is the thing I feel is the biggest clip of him actually like reveling in this. And
Yeah.
he's like, well, I don't like it. It's kind of necessary. I kind of feel like it was a bit of a how can we make him a good guy kind of thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um, I took pictures of this because I was curious. Because you know Marvel, they always sneak little things
Mm-hmm.
into the show. The little numbers and letters on the elevator.
Yes, I saw that.
Do you think they have? Well, of course they have some special meaning, but would you have any idea what something? Oh, you can't see it. Never
It's an
mind.
invisible phone. No, I actually did see a picture of it on Reddit or somewhere, and I can't make sense of it, but I'm sure there's comic book fans that are eagle eyed more so than myself who can decipher that, or it may be even seeds or references to things in the future.
I'll go ahead and add that in so everybody can see it. If you guys
Okay.
have any idea what they mean, comment. See if you can help us out.
Yeah.
If there's any tie into the MCU, because knowing them, I wouldn't be surprised if they did something like that.
Yeah. Well, so far with Phase 4, I feel like they've been planting a lot more seeds than they have been doing
Yeah,
callbacks.
definitely. Oh, for sure. So why why do they say that time in the TVA is different compared to time outside the TVA?
I think because it exists outside of time. Like, I literally think it exists outside of time.
So there's literally no time whatsoever in the TVA.
Well, think about it. I mean, they're not human, so they don't need time there. Like the workers themselves, I don't know how that would work because obviously they have like the twister thing that makes you go back in time technically.
Right. Yeah.
But I feel like it exists to a degree outside of time, or maybe it doesn't matter. Time doesn't matter there because of the fact that they can time travel. So it doesn't matter what time it is. It's always 5 o'clock somewhere.
I guess it would make sense that there wasn't any time because they're the ones that control time essentially.
Yeah, the time police.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. It almost seems like it's like highway patrol, but they're not driving on the highway. They're parked to the side of it, and then when they see someone, they'll chase them, and they'll go into the timeline, aka the road, to do so.
Yeah. Loki escapes. He hides in the main waiting area with Casey.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Finds about the stones. Not
Yep.
real, apparently.
He gets the Tesseract back.
Okay, so impressions on that. How did you feel? Because I was a little disappointed the fact that people died over these stones, and there's multiple.
how I look at it is, how many eons is this universe? We have no idea. We know it's going to be, thousands and thousands of years, and we're going to be starting to explore that with the movie Eternals. But those stones could have come from any point in the timeline. Maybe someone did some time traveling and didn't bring them back. And so when they did a reset, does it just copy the item? And maybe they happen to have the other version because it was in evidence.
That's a good point. I
All
never
I'll
really
say
thought
is
about that.
we don't know the technology that the TVA has. That's
Yeah.
what I'm getting at. As
I'm
far as
hoping
like
we learn
people
more about it.
dying, right? Me too. As far as people dying over it, I don't. That didn't really bother me because of the fact that we know that it doesn't work there. They're still
Hmm.
the most powerful things in the universe. But again, this I think exists almost outside of space and time. Another reason why it might not work there is because it doesn't exist within time. Maybe it takes time for a portal to appear using the Infinity Stone, or for whatever to work. That's my theory, is that they're outside space and time altogether.
Right, that makes sense. When he's talking to Loki and he's showing him like the death of his mom and stuff like that. And he's like, the only person you can trust, and I believe it was Owen Wilson's character cut him off and was like, is yourself. And he's like, I like it. Slap it on a t-shirt.
Yeah, yeah, he's a very funny character without having to be
Yeah,
over the top, and that's what I like about his character so
yeah,
far.
definitely. Me too.
With them doing the twist at the very end, I know I'm kind of jumping ahead when we see that there's another Loki as the villain. I was actually really cool with that. I was like, that is going to be a really cool thing to see. Um, but the question is, if they're trying to stop a Loki from the past, why didn't they stop him before he got to this point in Battle of New York? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because if let's say that this TVA existed long before Loki ever was born on Jotunheim,
Mm-hmm.
Loki 300 years after he's born, we'll say 1,000 years before he's in New York, does whatever this evil Loki's doing, and then he continues with his life, continues, and then we see him in Thor and then Avengers, and now he goes back in time to stop himself from something that TVA couldn't stop him to do.
Yeah.
Why would they need him to stop him to begin with?
I think because he's so good at what he does that he was able to just, hide, and because he, like, even at the very end, if it's actually him, he planned for them to show up, which is why they were like, oh, there's oil right here. And then he throws the lantern on the ground and burns them to death. So I mean,
Yeah,
I think he knows their ways and he understands them and has studied them well enough to know, okay, this is how I can escape them without doing this. Maybe they showed up some point in
yeah,
that
but he
Loki's
seems
timeline.
surprised that the TVA was even a thing, and yet what you're suggesting is that he knew about them and knew how to avoid them, and maybe not them specifically, but knew how to avoid detection.
Right.
But if they exist outside of space and time, can't they just pluck him from any point in the timeline before said thing happens?
Maybe it's a different timeline. Maybe they weren't able to do that.
I don't know. I'm hoping that's one of those things that they kind of explain a little bit more, because that's one of those things where it's like, I can't be the only person who thought of that. There's
Mm-hmm.
much smarter people out there than I, and so not many, but there are some. Um, but yeah, so it's, if I'm thinking of, wait, why couldn't they just do it themselves?
Yeah.
Why is this a problem now? I guess is the way I would phrase that question. Why is Loki from the past a problem now when the only time he was ever a problem is when he stole the Tesseract?
Unless there's another timeline, which is why I think they're trying to capture him. And
Like he's a deviant
he
from
didn't.
another timeline who escaped?
Right. So,
That
and
would be a cool way to
so
explain
he
that.
wasn't exactly captured by the TVA. He escaped them and was on the run and,
Maybe not
going
even
through
a
other.
timeline, but a different multiverse. Because again, it's
Yeah,
supposed to
even
somehow
that.
tie. So maybe this is Loki from one of the other multiverses that
Yeah.
he's fighting. So the timeline there is very different. Um, that'll be interesting. I think that's something that's going to unfold over time, and so
Mm-hmm.
hopefully they'll answer some of those questions.
Yeah. Um, when he was talking to Owen Wilson basically called him a pussycat variant,
Yes,
saying essentially he's not one of the most dangerous ones. Like there's even more
of
dangerous
his
ones,
version of himself.
either of himself or. just the time variant themselves. Because
I will
people
say,
who
oh,
people
sorry, go ahead.
who cross the timeline or split that timeline, they're called variants. So I
Right.
guess really anybody who does that type of thing. So I would assume either him or even Thanos, maybe.
Well, I think just by them saying like, "Hey, there's another one of you out there," and saying that, "Hey, you're not the strongest Loki around,"
Yeah,
I think will add a lot more threat to the season with the other Loki. Again, I'm predicting it's going to be a girl version, so it's not Tom Hiddleston fighting Tom Hiddleston, a la Captain America versus Captain America. It's going to be Loki versus Loki, but this is a different Loki than we've seen before.
that's true.
That's how I would do it. Also, there's no main girls. I mean, in the show, all we really know is there's Owen Wilson, there's B-15.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying that Owen Wilson's a girl, but I'm saying of the main characters,
Right.
Loki, Owen Wilson, B-15. I don't think the Judge was a main character. I don't even know if B-15 is going to be a main character, but
I'm not
she was
sure.
big enough of a character in the first episode. So
She
it's
seems
like,
to be like his right hand man.
right. And so for me, I'm like, all right, you always have at least one female in a crew. There's always a
Yeah.
guy and a girl, at least minimum. So is it B-15 or is it evil Loki's sister type thing? Not sister, but evil Loki.
Never really thought about that.
Yeah, time will tell.
But I mean, even then, it could just be someone completely different. I mean, we may not even get to
Yeah.
see that silhouetted character in the next episode, or even till the end of the to the series.
Right, because it
It
is
could
supposed to go
be
on for multiple seasons.
right, and it could be really anybody. It could be Scarlet Witch because she has a hood on her costume. It could be even Doctor Strange. He's got a hood on his costume. I
Yeah,
mean,
but I feel
it
like
could
that'd be such a cop out. Like you tell your fans, your viewers, hey, this is an evil Loki and it's a twist, and then you're like, oh, by the way, we were just kidding. It's really Scarlet Witch, or it's really so and so. I think it is Loki.
yeah, one thing I do like, my favorite part, and my girlfriend had no idea who he was. The second they showed that scene where he's in a suit with
Oh, DB
sunglasses,
Cooper.
and yeah, and he hands her the note, and I was like, oh, he's DB Cooper. And she's like, who is DB Cooper? And I was like, how do you not know who DB Cooper is? It's a
Haven't you seen
great
Without a
story.
Paddle?
Yeah, exactly.
But yes, no, DB Cooper is. I only knew him from Without a Paddle. I knew it was a true story, but I didn't really know anything about DB Cooper outside of that he's in that movie.
It's a I wouldn't say a conspiracy theory because he was a real dude. And
Right.
everything happened. He jumped out of the plane with a bag of cash and
Went to Asgard.
he was never seen again. So it makes sense. He went to Asgard, got the
Yeah.
Bifrost, and just got zipped up.
Yeah, I just can't imagine what bet that they would have done that he would have gone to Midgard to fulfill. I think it was more of like a, hey, let's just show that he's been mischievous throughout time, and that maybe that's part of it, and maybe that's what's going to happen with the evil Loki that we're going to see.
Yeah, that makes sense. Um,
Was there any other things in your notes?
there was that fight between her B-15 Hunter B-15 and Loki where he puts the collar on her and he's
That was cool.
doing
That
the
was
whole
actually
thing.
really funny. She's like, "Stop it."
Yeah. She just keeps going back and forth. I think it's great. And then ends up like in front of Casey and he's like, there you are, you know this happened. And then they just move up. But yeah, I thought that was pretty great. And then of course there's that end scene. You know, they're standing in the field, they see the silhouetted character.
It's gotta be Loki. I mean,
They
again, I feel
think
like it'd be such a cop out if it wasn't.
I mean, they're thinking some variant who's trying to go back in time to get rich because they know where the oil's at, you know.
Maybe.
But it's not. Well, that's what they said. They're like, oh, maybe it's just some punk trying to go back in time,
Oh, right. I see what
trying
you're
to
saying.
get
I thought you
rich.
were doing a theory. Okay, I got you.
And then that's when they drop the lantern and everybody lights up in flames. And then he picks up that little puck thing at the very end.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you remember, actually, I'm pretty sure it's Loki or even a right hand man. Because at the beginning of the episode, when we first meet Owen Wilson's character, they talked about how like this massacre happened, and he's like, yeah, and they took the little puck thing as well. He's like, it's missing, it's gone, and then you see it at the end. So I mean, it could be him. It could be like a right hand man trying to split them up. I'm not sure. If anybody
really
has any theories,
yeah, absolutely. Put your theories in the comments. I'm really looking forward to seeing how the season progresses. I feel like 6 episodes is both good and bad. It's good because they're gonna jam pack those 6 episodes rather than stretching it out, and but it's not good because I want more Marvel overall.
Yeah, I mean, who doesn't? They're wonderful at what they do.
But we have a lot of Marvel coming up this year. We still have Hawkeye, we have Miss Marvel, we have Black Widow, Eternal, Shang Chi, um, Spider Man.
Yep.
And that's all this year, not including What If. But I mean, that's not really part of the cinematic universe the same way.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it's all going to be exciting. If
It is.
anybody has any theories or anything like that, or even corrections, feel free to comment.
please do. Thank you guys for joining us. Please feel free to like and subscribe, and of course share the content. It would be much appreciated as we help grow the channel. And we'll see you guys next time.